In a small American town, a young teacher named Sarah walked into her first classroom, her heart racing with hope, only to be met by a group of ruthless bullies who would drag her by her hair and force her to crawl in front of her students. What happened next was so shocking, it left the entire school speechless and changed the town forever. Stick around to hear this unbelievable true story. And don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Sarah Mitchell had always dreamed of being a teacher. At 25, with her freshly printed degree from a small college in Ohio, she packed her life into a beat-up hatchback and drove to Pinewood, a sleepy town in rural Indiana where everyone knew everyone and secrets didn't stay buried long. Pinewood Middle School had offered her a job teaching 8th grade English. Sarah saw it as her chance to make a difference, to inspire young minds the way her own teachers had inspired her. She spent weeks preparing lesson plans, decorating her classroom with colorful posters, and practicing her introduction in the mirror. But nothing could have prepared her for the storm waiting inside those cinder block walls. Asterisk on her first day, Sarah wore a navy blazer and a bright smile, her blonde hair neatly pinned up. The classroom buzzed with restless energy as 30 13-year-olds sized her up. Most of the students were curious but polite, their eyes darting between their new teacher and their phones. But in the back row sat a group of 4 boys: Dylan, Mason, Tyler, and Jake, who called themselves the Pack. They were the kind of kids who ruled the school through fear, their smirks sharp as knives. Dylan, the ringleader, leaned back in his chair, his dark eyes locked on Sarah like a predator sizing up prey. She felt a chill but brushed it off. Was the adult here? She was in control, or so she thought. The first week went smoothly enough. Sarah taught her lessons, cracked a few jokes, and tried to connect with her students. But the Pack was different. They ignored her questions, whispered insults just loud enough for her to hear, and left crude drawings on her desk. By Friday, Dylan had taken to calling her Miss Priss in a mocking drawl. The others followed his lead, snickering every time she turned her back. Sarah stayed calm, remembering her training. Kids test boundaries, she told herself. She'd win them over with patience. But patience wasn't enough. Following Monday, things escalated. Sarah was writing on the whiteboard when a paper ball hit the back of her head. She turned to see Dylan grinning, his hands folded innocently. The class giggled, and Sarah's cheeks burned. She asked him to step outside, but he just laughed and said, "Make me." The room went silent, the other students watching to see what she'd do. Sarah, determined not to lose control, issued a detention slip. Ah! Dylan tore it up and tossed the pieces in the air like confetti.
At.
That was the moment Sarah realized this wasn't just about testing boundaries. This was war. Over the next few weeks, the Pack's behavior grew bolder. They tripped her in the hallway, accidentally spilled soda on her lesson plans, and spread rumors that she was too weak to handle them. Sarah reported the incidents to Principal Hawkins, a tired man counting down to retirement, but he brushed her off. "Kids will be kids," he said, adjusting his tie. "You're new. I'll settle down." Sarah wasn't so sure. She started losing sleep, her dreams haunted by Dylan's sneer and the sound of laughter. She confided in her only friend. At school, Maria, a veteran math teacher who warned her to be careful. "Those boys come from rough homes," Maria said over coffee one afternoon. "Dylan's dad is in prison, and Mason's mom isn't around. They're angry at the world, and you're an easy target." Sarah tried to empathize, but empathy was hard to muster when she found her car tires slashed in the faculty lot. She spent her savings on repairs. Embarrassed to tell her family back in Ohio, she started doubting herself, wondering if she was cut out for this. But giving up wasn't in her nature. She doubled down, researching classroom management techniques and trying to engage the Pack with projects she thought might interest them. She even brought in a guest speaker, a local poet, hoping to spark some inspiration. The poet was mid-sentence when Dylan threw a pencil at his head. The class erupted in chaos, and Sarah's heart sank. She was losing them. The breaking point came on a cold November morning. Sarah was collecting homework when Dylan stood up, walked to the front of the room, and grabbed a fistful of her hair. Before she could react, he yanked hard, pulling her to her knees. The class gasped as Mason joined in, shoving her forward until she was crawling on the floor, her blazer ripping at the seam. Tyler and Jake stood by, recording the scene on their phones, laughing as Sarah's glasses fell off and skidded across the tile. "Crawl, Miss Priss," Dylan shouted, his voice dripping with venom. The other students were frozen, some horrified, others too scared to intervene. Sarah's mind raced, torn between fear and fury. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but her body wouldn't move. She felt small, powerless, like she was back in middle school herself, cornered by the mean girls who'd mocked her braces and hand-me-down clothes. Then, from the back of the room, a voice broke the silence. "Stop." It was Emma, a quiet girl who always sat alone, her nose buried in a book. She was trembling, but her eyes were fierce. "You're disgusting, Dylan. All of you." The pack turned on her, but before they could say anything, another student, a shy boy named Lucas, stood up. "She's right. This is messed up." One by one, other students joined in, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance. Dylan's smirk faltered as the room turned against him. Sarah, still on her knees, felt a spark of hope. She pushed herself to her feet, her hands shaking, and faced Dylan. "Get out," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "Now, Stevisk." Dylan hesitated, then stormed out with the pack trailing behind him. "Ah!" The bell rang, and the other students filed out, some whispering apologies, others avoiding her gaze. Sarah collapsed into her chair, her body trembling.
Ow.
She knew this wasn't over. The video of her crawling was already spreading, and by lunch, it was all over the school. Parents were calling, demanding answers. Principal Hawkins finally took notice, suspending the pack for a week, but Sarah knew a suspension wouldn't change them. She spent that night at home, staring at her laptop, reading the hateful comments under the video on social media. "Weak teacher gets what she deserves," one read. Another said, "She should quit if she can't handle kids." Sarah closed her laptop and cried, wondering if they were right. But something shifted in her that night. She thought of Emma, Lucas, and the other students who'd stood up for her. She thought of her younger self, the girl who dreamed of teaching despite everyone telling her she wasn't tough enough. She wasn't going to let the pack win. The next morning, Sarah walked into school with a plan. She met with Principal Hawkins and demanded a meeting with the parents of every student in her class. She also requested access to the school's security footage, which had captured the entire incident. Hawkins, shaken by the growing backlash, agreed. The meeting was held in the school auditorium, a tense gathering of parents, students, and faculty. Sarah stood at the podium, her voice steady as she recounted what had happened. Not just the hair-pulling and crawling, but the weeks of torment that led up to it. She showed the security footage, letting the images speak for themselves. Gasps filled the room as parents saw their children's face, some laughing, some standing by silently. Then Sarah did something unexpected. She didn't just call out the pack, she called out the school's culture of looking the other way. The teachers who'd ignored the bullying, and the parents who'd dismissed it as kids being kids. She spoke about the power of standing up, about how Emma and Lucas had shown more courage than most adults in the room. The room was silent when she finished. Then Emma's mother stood up, tears in her eyes, and apologized for not knowing how bad things had gotten. Other parents followed, some angry at their children, others at themselves. Dylan's mother, a tired woman who worked double shifts at a diner, broke down, admitting she hadn't been there for her son. The meeting turned into a raw, messy reckoning for Pinewood, forcing everyone to confront the truth about their school and their town. But the real twist came a week later. Sarah received an anonymous email with a link to a new video. It was shaky, clearly filmed on a phone, and it showed Dylan sitting alone in his bedroom, his face pale. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I don't know why I did it." The video cut to Mason, then Tyler, then Jake, each offering their own halting apologies. They admitted they'd been trying to impress each other, to prove who was toughest. They hadn't expected the whole school to turn on them, or for their parents to ground them indefinitely. The video ended with Dylan saying, "Miss Mitchell, you didn't deserve that. I hope you don't hate us." Sarah was stunned. She didn't know who'd convinced the pack to make the video, but she suspected Emma had something to do with it. The quiet girl had been spending more time with her classmates, organizing a peer mediation group to address bullying. Sarah showed the video to the class, not to shame the pack, but to start a conversation. To her surprise, Dylan and the others returned to school, humbled, their bravado gone. They didn't become model students overnight, but they started participating, even apologizing to Sarah in person. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As spring arrived in Pinewood, Sarah found herself at the center of a quiet revolution. The school board, shaken by the national attention. OCATD funds for a full-time counselor and anti-bullying training for staff. Sarah, now seen as a leader, was asked to spearhead the initiative. She hesitated, still carrying the scars of that November morning, but she agreed, driven by the memory of her students' courage. She started a mentorship program, pairing older students like Emma with younger ones to foster empathy and accountability. Dylan, surprisingly, signed up, revealing a talent for writing that Sarah nurtured through after-school workshops. His essays, raw and honest, spoke of a boy grappling with his father's absence and his own anger. Sarah saw potential in him, a flicker of the person he could become. Meanwhile, the town itself began to change. Parents formed a support group, meeting weekly to discuss how to raise kinder kids. Local businesses sponsored school events. And the diner where Dylan's mother worked hung a banner supporting Pinewood students. Sarah's story had sparked something bigger than herself, movement to rebuild a community fractured by indifference. She wasn't just a teacher anymore. She was a catalyst. At the end of the school year, her students threw her a surprise party, complete with a cake that read, "Miss Mitchell, our hero." As she cut the first slice, tears in her eyes, Sarah realized she'd found her purpose. The bullies who'd tried to break her had instead shown her how strong she could be. And Pinewood would never be the same. The story of Sarah's ordeal spread beyond Pinewood. It's picked up by local news and then national outlets. People across the country were captivated by the teacher who'd faced humiliation and come out stronger, and by the students who'd found the courage to stand up. Sarah was invited to speak at education conferences, sharing her story and advocating for stronger anti-bullying policies. Pinewood Middle School implemented new programs including mandatory workshops for parents and students. Sarah stayed on, determined to rebuild her classroom into a place of trust. She even formed a bond with Dylan, who started staying after class to talk about books, revealing a side of himself he'd kept hidden behind his tough exterior. Months later, Sarah stood in her classroom, now filled with new posters and student projects. The pack was still a work in progress, but they were trying. Emma had become her unofficial teaching assistant, always ready with a quiet word of encouragement. Sarah looked out at her students, her heart full. She'd come to Pinewood to make a difference, and despite everything, she had. The bullies, who dragged her by her hair, had forced her to confront her own strength. And what happened next to town, coming together, kids finding their conscience, a teacher refusing to give up, shocked everyone. What an incredible story of resilience and redemption, right? I'm curious, where are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let me know which part of the country you're in. Is it New York, California, Texas, or somewhere else? And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next unforgettable tale. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.